Okay, so we're back, and the last couple animations that we need are fire and aim, and that's really it. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting with the idle scene again. I'm just going to once again delete the all the keyframes on everything. Make sure there's no animation left over. Okay, and the fire animation is actually going to be very short. It's only going to be 20 frames. Okay. And all I really need to do is just make sure I set my loop points. And then what I'm going to do is with this guy here selected, I'm just going to lock a keyframe, so I don't want it to move for the first 2 frames. And over the next 4 frames I'm going to move it straight back. Okay, and then as it comes back up, I'm just going to rotate it up a little bit. Okay, so if I play it, it's got a little pause, and then it kicks back, and then he kind of brings it up and back. Okay, so straight back, up, and then down. Okay, and let me rotate that back down so there's more of a straight back, and then boom. Let it go up 1 5-degree notch there. Okay, and then before he does anything, you notice I put this little 2-frame delay here. Is actually when he goes to pull the trigger. Pull that in a little bit and take this. Let me freeze this. Just take this bone and pull that in a little bit. And I'll take the trigger, click that back till it hits the back, and then I can move this in a little bit more. Okay, so you can see that he pulls the trigger, and then the gun fires. Okay, once he pulls the trigger, the slide. Just going to lock a keyframe. I'm going to hit Control A with keyframe at 0 and a keyframe at 2, so everything has keyframes at 0 and 2. For the next 2 frames, as this gets launched back, oops, move the slide back as far as that goes, and then over the next 2 frames, it's just going to snap back. Now the Glock doesn't have a hammer, so it's just the slide movement. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trigger and the 2 bones in the finger here, and over the next 4 frames I'm going to have it release that. So he pulls it, and then as it's going back, you see the finger releases off that trigger a little bit. If I wanted to, I could have him squeeze his thumb just a little bit by just moving that tip down a little bit. Okay, and then I could also take this guy and just so he's slightly putting tension on the gun with his hands, very subtle movement. Okay. So as he squeezes his whole hand. Okay. Squeezes the trigger, you don't pull it. Alright. And that's it. You don't need much more than that. It's a very quick animation. It pretty much looks like he's shooting a gun. Okay, and that's kind of what I do pretty much in general. You don't really want a whole lot more than that. Now remember, this is the if somebody were to fire real rapidly, it would actually repeat before it finishes. So this whole cocking thing where it kicks back, if they fire it faster than that, it would actually be kind of the same thing as me saying if I'm going to end it at like 8 or something, if they fire this fast, it's going to look like this. Okay? Which might not look great, but it's better to do that and let them fire fast. than it is to make them wait out that whole animation. Okay, so just set it back to 20 here. And all of this movement that goes up here, we're not going to do that in the aim fire because that becomes extremely difficult to use the weapon. The weapon's just frustrating to fire when it's moving around all in your view all crazy. So really, when we fire it in one player, in the aim view, we just kind of do like a little bit like that, and that's it, and it comes back. It just moves a little bit, and then we use our on-screen recoil with our whole camera movement and everything like that to affect how the gun actually travels. But in this side view, where you're just aiming down a center crosshair, basically firing from the hip, we go ahead and give it some movement. Okay, and that's all we're going to do. So I'm just going to save this as arms fire. Okay, and again, I've got animation in the gun, so I'm going to need to export that. So the first thing is I'm going to pick my character, go to my Actor X. This is my arms anim. Okay, and this is one player underscore fire, and it goes from 0 to 20. So it's going to digest that. Hit OK. Go to Animation Manager and hit Load. Now I can just pop it in and hit Save. Okay. Grab let me unhide all, unfreeze all. Just going to get my selection set plus my arms and delete them. Get my two IK objects and delete them. I'll just delete the camera, and I'm going to save as one player gun fire. Okay. And you can see now that I've actually got some animation going on where the gun from frame 1 to 2 actually moves. This bone actually moves. Okay, so all I really need to do is just wipe the keyframe on that root bone, and you can see it stays where it is. Again, I want to go in view here, and I want to move it to 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, if I show my grid, it's at the 0 mark, and in the rotation on view, I want to be 0 in all the other things. So now you see that the trigger goes, then the slide goes, and the trigger a little bit slowly releases, and that's the whole animation of the actual gun. So it's Control Page down there to get all those bones. Going to change our animation file name to gun. Same name, same range. Just hit Digest with the Animation Manager and hit Load. Okay, so it's now changed to the gun. Just throw that in and save and hit OK. That's it. And now we want to try to actually remember the sequence of events that we did here, because if we animate this in the same fashion in the one-player aim, we don't actually need to do a one-player an aim gun fire. We can pretty much just call the same animation, and your programmer can set that up in code to be either one of the fires to check for just one-player fire. Okay. Every time it shoots, and whatever function he creates for that. So we just save that, and now we can do our aim animation. So I'm just going to go ahead and reopen my idle. Okay. Once again, hit Control A and just wipe my keyframes. And go File, Save As, Aim. Okay. And what we're going to do is, kind of like equip and unequip, we're going to put all these in one scene because it's just easier to have him bring it up to aim, then do an aim idle, and then have it fire, and then have him drop it back from aim. Okay, so it's only going to take a very short amount of time to bring up to aim. You don't want that to last a long time, otherwise it's really frustrating to play your game. Okay, so going up to aim should be quick. So we're going to do 10 frames on that. Okay, just go to Auto Key. We'll hit 10 frames there. Our idle animation is going to be pretty much 50 frames. Okay, I could make it 100 if I wanted to extend this, and I'll go ahead. I'll just extend this out to like 130 for now, and I'll say at 110 is where the idle is. Okay, that's frame 110, and then from 110 to 130 he does the fire animation. Okay, and I'll just put a keyframe there for now too. You can see that there's actually a little bit of again, even though there's nothing going on, there's a little bit of movement, and that's because my curve tangent on one of these is going to have you can see that the tangent here is actually messed up. So all I got to do is just put it back to linear and then put it back to auto, and it's fixed. And there's no movement. Okay, so the first order of business is he's going to bring it up to aim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have him aim with two hands. This is going to be extremely fast. So the first order of business is he's going to bring it to the middle. At the same time, he's going to bring his other hand to it. Now, over the course of 5 frames is very quick, but you can do this very quick in reality. Okay. Now I basically need to get his hands, his left hand here, in a decent position. Generally, when you aim a weapon, go to my local here. Make sure I'm just going to hit A and give myself a keyframe at 0 and a keyframe at 5 here. Let me freeze my arms. Generally, you should be crossing over your thumbs. Okay, if you watch law enforcement movies or shows on how these guys train, I'm going to cheat a little bit and break the thumb a hair. You should pretty much be thumb over thumb, and actually, the most part, most of the time, it's your left thumb over your right thumb. Okay, so he would actually move this thumb down a little bit. Oh my god, I'm going to need to work this back and forth to get a good pose to make sure. But really the left thumb usually crosses over, and they're kind of usually running in the same direction. Okay. In some cases they're actually you can put them side by side. It really depends on the thickness of the gun and kind of what you're going for here. I don't want to fold this out too far because it's going to look completely unnatural. Okay, so I wanted to keep it over, and I don't want to have them crossing into each other. So even though in reality he would oops, I hit the deselected my bone here. Even though in reality he would be left thumb over right thumb if you were doing this properly, I'm going to go ahead and undo that a little bit because it's slightly messing up my my hand skeleton here, and part of that has to do with, you know, just failure to, you know, make a totally perfect model. The other thing I can do here to help myself out is pull the hands back a little bit. Okay, they don't need to be that far forward. They also need to come out some. And now I should pretty much be able to kind of get all my fingers wrapping around these other fingers. Let me hit J to get rid of all those stupid selection boxes. Okay, just kind of wrap the fingers around the other hand without crossing over anywhere too badly. You do actually want to have a little bit of dip in, because what you're kind of simulating is the fat of the fingers, the meat that's present on a real human. Actually, you know, compressing a little bit up against these surfaces. So if you noticed earlier that I've got the thumb passing a little bit through the gun, it makes a better connection than if I made sure that no point passed through here. You know, if I really said, okay, you know, like if I took this bone and made sure, okay, well I can only go to right there because then otherwise it passes through, you know, it doesn't look that good. And the fact that it compresses into here and it's actually passing through the model, you can see the thumb inside the model. It's preferable to do that than it is to keep it you know, realistically far away from it. You know, you gotta remember in real life this part of your, you know, your thumb will compress against it. Okay, it's soft. The other thing I think I want to do actually here is I'm going to move it in some, and then I'm going to take my wrist bone, I'm going to rotate it out some. Okay, and I'm actually going to rotate it over a little bit, and then I can kind of work it in a little bit better, because it should be pretty much running down the line of the gun. When you hold your gun with two hands, if both palms are facing relatively the same amount. And I don't want to, you know, crush over my other fingers here with my palm, but I do want to go cut them in a little bit, because like I said, you want to simulate the fact that all of these surfaces are compressing, and by just passing them into each other, the eye just kind of will automatically pretty much discount the fact that it, you know, oh, it's crossing in. It doesn't really look like it's crossing in as much as it just looks like it's connected, you know, pressing together. So I'm going to keep it about like that. Okay, so the reason that I moved it, I actually like the angle, but the reason that I moved it down was because it should maybe be about here, which might actually be a little bit better. Let me go ahead and keep it up. This isn't going to be exactly in view all that much. This would be, obviously you're not going to see anything in the front here, so really where I've got this, the tip of this finger could be like that. You're not going to see it. You're going to be looking at it like this, okay? Which is kind of why I want to get it closer here, because of tuning this for the view that I'm looking at. So I can kind of that into position there, and that doesn't look too bad, and it's really not passing over too much stuff. I mean, the fingers are cutting, you know, they're riding over and inside these fingers, but I want to make sure that from right here everything looks good, okay? Which it doesn't look too bad. And then I can take this and kind of flatten that out a little bit, and at the same time I can kind of back that out of the way a little bit. Okay, so thumbs are pretty much pointing in the same direction. The only difference would be that this one would normally be over the top of this one, or they would be completely side by side. Okay, so that's the first order of business, is to get that to just come together. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to link this. Go to our motion. You can see I got no link. So I'm going to go animation on frame 0 is important. Animation constraints, link constraint. I'm just going to pick that guy here, and then just say link to world. And you can see that it actually got messed up. I'm just gonna delete that link, and then I can link to world. Okay, so then it didn't reassociate itself. Try to say, okay, well, I was, moving from how much the world was, it was offset on the world. I don't know exactly why it freaks out like that, but it does do that. And then at frame 5, I'm going to say add link to be that weapon socket. Make sure I come off of add link. I'm going to pick my wrist bone, go to animation, constraints, orientation constraint, and I'm going to pick that socket, and it's going to twist up my arm. Hit keep initial offset. Highlight this guy at the frame I want to keep it at. It's going to pop that up 1 and then down 1, and go back to frame 4 and make it 0. Frame 0, make it 0. So now at frame 5, it definitely comes on. Okay, you'll notice that the animation actually wigs out when there shouldn't be anything going on after the fact, but that can actually be ignored. So if I go to frame 10 now, and I take this and move it, you can see that it actually, animation, even though it's wigged, is actually working. And the reason that it wigs is because this doesn't know where to go. So if I just add a keyframe at the end here, and actually take this guy and add keyframes, you can see that it's fixed. Well, no, it's not fixed yet. Hang on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Control A and give that a keyframe at 10. One of these objects. So when things, freak out like that, sometimes it's best just to hit Control A and just actually put down a keyframe, because so if I hit Control A here and I get rid of these last keyframes, you can see that the arm twists up and shoots off and acts all funny. But if I just add a keyframe with nothing moving, it's fixed. Okay, so we can just do that temporarily so we don't see that weird glitch. So once the hand comes together, then we want it to come up to the actual aim point. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my left view here. I'm not going to show the safe frame anymore. I'm going to hit G so I can see my view here, and I'm going to hide that bone. Now what I want to do is, in the aim view, I want to line this side up. I want to make sure that its rotation in view is 90s and 0s, so it's perfectly straight. And then I want to move it so that it's lined up with the center of the axis, so that it's pointing down the scene here. Now you'll see that use pivot point center is the only one I can pick because I'm on AutoKey. If I uncheck AutoKey, I can pick different axes here, and I think that there's actually a way to yeah, it's right here, local center during animate. If I uncheck that and hit OK, I should actually be able to still tell this to use my view here. Okay, so let me blow this guy up, and now what I want to do is I want to center this at frame 10 right on my axis. Okay, and I can zoom in to make sure that I'm really close, so that aiming down the gun sight here, putting that is actually right where you're going to shoot. Okay, so that's lined up perfect. So whether or not you're doing your firing trace off of your screen, from the center of your screen to your target, or if you're doing it off of the front of your gun, your aim point is still very, very good. Okay? And okay, can move it a little bit left and right here or whatnot, but I just want to kind of try and center that as best as I can. Okay, so I go back to my perspective view here, and now that that's good, now I can do my idle animation. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control A. Just going to slap a keyframe to make sure that everything is trapped at 10. I'll hold Shift, and I'm going to drag this out to 110. Okay. If you can't see that this is 110, let me just show you. If you look down here, there's a field that's actually giving you a rolling information. If I hold Shift and start dragging, you can see that it says copy keys from 10 and then 2, and that number is raising and raising and raising. So I can get close to where I think it is, and then I can back it off back and forth until I say, okay, it's 110. And it says in parentheses after that it's moved 100 frames. And that's R. Okay, and you can see that during this there's no movement. So now I want to come to frame 60, which is the halfway point between 10 and 110, and hit a keyframe there. And then halfway of that, okay, would be 25, so I need to be at 35. Okay, actually before I do that, let me do a little bit of movement left. Okay, just going to move it slightly left, and then at frame 35 I'm going to move it slightly down, and then another 25 after this, which would be 85. I'm going to move it slightly down. Okay, and now you can see that I've got this little bit of movement. However, I feel that it's a little exaggerated, and for now what I want to do is I just want to preview this part of the animation from 10 to 110. So I'm going to right click here, and I want my start time to be 10, my end time to be 110. I'm just going to hit OK, and now when I hit play, just my loop point is actually going to be in a good position. Okay, so then what I can do is pause that and look in my camera view. If I hit play here, you can see that's how much movement. You can see it kind of shifts over to the right a little quick and moves over. So I need to check my curve. Okay, so I go to my curve editor here, drag that into view for you, and grab this, and let's see, my X position doesn't really go anywhere. Okay, I can extend that out. Unfortunately, it's taking some of the information that's happened before. You can still see these keyframes exist after my preview area. You see this light gray is from 10 to 110, but really there's keyframes at 0 and there's keyframes after it. So just going to check here. So it can actually be a little bit difficult now to tune this curve, because I can't really extend it. Okay, I can't zoom my extents, and I don't know if there's a way to really do anything about that. I can't really zoom much farther in except just by, oh, actually I can kind of extend it this way by using this zoom values. Okay, I can increase the scaling vertically of my values. So this is a little bit easier for me to see now. Okay, and that was this guy here, zoom values in the corner right there. Okay, pretty sure you can see that. And I can just go back to my move tool and I can say, okay, well, I don't want this to be so moved. So I'm going to pick that guy and I'm going to put it at frame 35. Okay. You can see that my curve here needs actually a little bit of work to make sure that it's a sine wave, okay? Because it was coming down, and then what it was doing is, you got to remember that this piece of the animation is looping in UDK. So if this is all way down there like that, it's going to come up and hit there, and then it's going to go straight, and it's going to be an unnatural shift. So I kind of want to keep that coming out straight. Okay, let me zoom my values here. Okay, you can see my Y position where it moves left and right, really I just want to delete that and then take that key. Now if I don't hold shift, you can see I'm messing up my other side. Okay, but if I hold shift, I'm actually breaking my curve, okay? Because coming out of here is going to be different, alright? So now you can see I'm a little more even here, but I don't want to go as drastic. You can see I've offset it by 1, so I can just move that back to make sure if I'm previewing frame 60 here. And now as I move back and forth, I'm moving a little bit less in the Y. Okay, it's not moving so far left and right. It's barely moving at all, which is what you want. Okay, really that's probably good. I could make it actually exaggerated a little bit more. Okay, so it does trail a little bit left and right. You can see every time I switch, I've got to kind of zoom back in. You can see one side of my Z moves farther than the other one, so I'll just even that out. Put that to 35 because I keep. So I'll let me do it while I'm playing. Okay. And the other thing you can see is that my values here are actually updating now. The reason they weren't updating before on that other animation was because my max was all overextended and pissed and it hated me and it wouldn't undo and everything, so it was basically kind of locked up. So I got negative 1.273, negative 1.273, so my values are the same at my start and end points. So really my aim idle, which is just a little bit of movement, it's really, you can almost just barely see that the aliasing of the lines is moving. And that's really all we want. If it's moving around all over the place, it's stupid. You want this aim to be very, very tight. You know, you want it to be pretty much, you know, not moving around at all. So then what I could do is go to my perspective view here. I could tell it. Let me make sure that I pick my pivot point of my object. Okay, let me go back to go from 0 to 130 here. At frame 10, I want to move it back in the X a little bit. Let's say I want to get it a little bit closer. So what I got to do is I can just move it closer. Okay, it moves right down the line. And let me show my other view here, which I want to be my camera, and I want to show my save frame. If I go too close, not only does my arm flip over and freak out, but I'm actually going to hit the near clipping value of what's going on in UDK. So really we're going to have to just test this and try to figure out what is the distance that we want to have. Okay? So all I need to do is just take that keyframe. I'm just going to copy that X value. Okay, and you can see that it moves back. Okay, I'm going to paste that value at 60, and then I'm going to paste it at 110. Okay, you can see that at 30 it's going, 60 it's back, and it's moving forward. Okay, so I can pretty much just, you know, paste the value here at 85, or I can come here to the curve editor and go to my X position between frames 10 and 110. I can pretty much just delete these. Okay, so then he brings it to his hands, then he brings it up close, and then it moves back and forth, but it doesn't move in the X during this part. It stays flat. Okay. And now what I want to do is my fire animation. And the other thing is this fire is going to bring the gun even closer to the camera. So if we've breached our near clip, which is basically going to look like that. You know, you're going to see it actually clipping, okay, which is something that we're not going to really be able to know until we see it in UDK. The fix, if it is clipping, is just to move it forward. Just come back to this animation and say, okay, at frame 10, I need to move it a little bit forward, okay, and then I can just copy that and paste that to frame 10, okay. I don't have any keyframes on X, and I've just edited the value at X, so it's not like it's going to try to add keyframes here just from doing that, okay. So then again, at frame 2 frames after, we lock in that keyframe. You can see it's actually kind of moving. So what I want to do here really quick is go to my curve editor, and I want to take these two and make them linear. Okay. If I zoom in on this, I can take this one and make it linear. Then I can take this one and I can actually just bring this back to the point. Okay, and I can do the same in my Z position, which is really, I don't believe there's an awful lot going on here. I want my zoom, if I go to view zoom values, okay, just check this. There is movement here, okay, however subtle. Okay, so in order to try to alleviate some of that, I'm just going to copy 10 to 12. Okay, you can see that this tangent is linear, but this one is doing something weird. So if I just hit that to linear real quick, okay, zoom in on this guy and zoom my values, it should stay a flat line no matter how close I get. Whoa, never done that before. Okay, so we shouldn't really have too much movement between 10 and 110 and 112. This is another reason why it's not a good idea to combine all your animations into one timeline, because this becomes a real hassle. You know, if the start of your scene and the end of your scene are, you know, their own animation, it's much easier, in my opinion, to manage your animations, because especially when you start editing curves and things like that, you know, you got this giant long timeline, you need to preview just a little piece of it, and then you've got to worry about the curves that are coming out of this animation, whereas in reality you shouldn't have to worry about that. It should just, that's the end of that particular animation. So that's why I do not suggest that you do your entire one-player set on one animation at all. Let me say Control A here and get rid of that keyframe that was at the end here, just for now. And now I'm going to move the gun back in the view, and then really just going to put it back forward 4 frames after that, okay, or 8 frames after that. So really the fire animation just moves the gun straight back a little bit, okay, and once again I'm going to change my preview from 110 to 130. I'm going to hit OK. So now I can just play that. So what I could do is, as it goes back and it's coming forward, if I want, I could shift it a little bit up in the Z so it kind of moves up. I don't want to do too much rotation, because even the slightest degree of rotation really pulls that gun off of the center point, and you can do that if you want, if you kind of want to punish a player for shooting an aimed view, and you want to make it a little bit harder. By all means, you know, do whatever you want on this animation. It's up to you. But for us, we found that doing the bare minimum of movement in the one-player firing animation, and then having the scene itself move up by basically doing some recoil calculations that
that are proprietary to what we've been been doing, that Paul figured out, programmer. We get a much better feel to shooting the gun in aimed mode. It just feels it feels funner and easier. We don't want to make the game too easy, but at the same time we don't want it to be hard because it just looks stupid. It's like a platformer game. A particular jump is really hard for two reasons. One, because it's hard to time, and that makes the game fun. The other reason that it could be hard to make this particular jump is because the jump sucks. You hit the button and it doesn't happen right away, and the smoothness of the character moving up and down sucks, and he's hard to control in the air. And that exact same, obstacle, one game it's fun to practice to get it, and the other game is a nightmare and people don't want to play it. So that's why in AIM we decided that we're not going to punish you at all for shooting in the AIM view. We're just going to keep it real slight movement, okay? So it's much easier to shoot in the aimed view, and then like I said, we use recoil to mess up your shot after the fact. So it's not, you're not always just firing a laser gun, okay? So pretty much that's probably enough movement. However, like I said, I could be getting too close to the near clip plane, and if that happens when I shoot, the back of the gun's going to disappear. And if that does happen, I need to come back here and just back this off and move it more forward, okay? Just make it so that I don't get so close to the aim. The other factor that you got to take into account is that when you aim, a lot of times you'll actually have a field of vision change, okay, or field of view change. You'll have an FOV swap, and if it turns into like a 90, okay, if I turn off auto key here and I change this to 90, that doesn't feel too close at all. But if you zoom in with like 45 or say like 10 or something, okay, then you see how much closer that looks just because you've narrowed the field of vision down, okay? And that can also help, if you edit that, can help your zoom look a lot better, okay? And I forget what we used for our field of view during AIM, because we do zoom. Even if there's no scope, you do a little bit of a zoom. Okay, pretty much all games do that, even though in reality that's stupid, right? I mean, how you can zoom just looking down a sight, but really what they're trying to achieve there is not a zoom as much as it is a kind of like a narrowing of your vision, which kind of makes it so you can you're focusing on what's down this better. So that's kind of why that happens. Okay. So let me just get back to this so we can actually finish. And then what I'm going to do again, I'm just going to make this full screen for the gun, is the trigger is going to move back at 2 frames, and then it's going to move forward over the next 4 frames. Okay. Same thing with the finger. Oops, need to be at frame 112 here, and then I'm just going to grab that and move it forward like that. Okay, so that's exactly the same as regular fire. The slide is going to start at 112, and over the course of 2 frames, which is 14, that slams back to match that up, and then just comes back at 16. So it's exactly the same timing, which means I can now I don't need to export the firing animation for this, because I already have that animation in that exact timing. Okay, I just remembered it. First 2 frames is the trigger, and then it takes 4 frames for that to come back. However, from here to here, the same 4 frames is the slide action. Now if I look at this in the camera view and I hit play, okay, it might be a little less noticeable that happened, and you don't even see the trigger or the finger, but it's happening. Okay, so we're being thorough. And like I said, in our weapon, if you move your mouse left and right, you look left and right, the weapon does kind of trail behind a little bit and actually changes its angle a little bit. So there's a chance that if you're swinging to the right really fast and you pull the trigger, you might see what's going on the side a little bit here. Okay. So really, that's good enough for the firing animation. Okay, so now I can pretty much go from 0 to 130. And like I said, we have 2 aim, and really, if I reverse that, it pretty much just looks exactly like, you know, like what it would. And like I said, you know, they've made it possible now to reverse an animation, so we really don't need a from aim. Okay, if we did need a from aim, we'd have to undo what we've done, basically. Okay, and remember, we did it over the course of 10 frames here. So I'm going to go ahead and do, so 140. I'm going to go ahead and do a from aim, just in case, the worst case scenario, that you can't figure out how to use a reverse. Just hit Control A, okay, and just slap a keyframe here. Now really, all I need to do is take this guy at frame 130 and go to my motion tab and link it to world at frame 130, okay, and then I need to disable my orientation constraint. Okay, so one frame before that, I want to make sure it's still at 100%, and then at frame 130 I make it 0. You see the hand tweaks. I make my Euler active. Okay, hit rotation, and I'm just gonna go pick here based on the slide, because all of these are actually at the same angle. Doesn't really matter which bone I pick. Every single one of these weapon bones is all at the same angle right now. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go to frame frame 129, copy the value, tick over to frame 130, paste the value, copy my Y, paste my Y, copy my Z, paste my Z. Okay, now you can see there's no difference. Okay, you can see that it kind of wigs out. Control A, and I put a keyframe. Okay, it's still wigging out. However, it's really, I believe, this guy that's freaking out. If I take this and move it, you can see it doesn't freak out, but then if I don't, then it does wig out. So what I can try to do to fix that, which I can't fully explain why that happens, because there's no keyframes here, but let me actually go ahead and give it one. That's still not fixing anything. I do know that my root bone doesn't have a keyframe at the end, and that fixed it. Okay, because I had that hidden, I wasn't able to add a keyframe there. So it looks like not having a you know, keyframes for your root bone going down the chain when you're starting to use some of these link constraints actually gives you really wacky, what I think is pretty much a glitch, you know. So just hit Control A and throw a keyframe down at, you know, farther down your line, and it'll fix that. So now what I want to do is just get this guy back into the same position. Okay, and I'll just go by view, and I'm going to drag here, and I'm just going to copy and paste, copy, paste, okay, for my Y, and then get my Z here. Okay, so that's back in the same position. Okay, hit Control A and go to frame 130 and just make sure there's a keyframe there. Make sure there's a keyframe there. And now what I can do is I can get my wrist and hit Control page down, and then I can pretty much just grab, oops, I moved that, hold Shift, grab that, and make sure that it goes to 1. Notice that I can drag it out here, and if you look at this number here, it actually goes farther. I can drag this beyond my marker, which I personally find to be problem. I think it shouldn't let me go any farther than 140. If I want to drag it any further, I should have to look further, if you ask me. Okay, so now you can see that if I, just looking at this arm, that if I go to my loop points back and forth here, that there's no movement in that left arm. Okay, now all I got to do is take this guy, and I can pretty much copy. See, I ended up moving it again. Copy frame 0 to frame 140, and if I move that, you can see once again that thumb movement that I did. Okay, if I look here and I go back to frame 0, the thumb's messed up. So I'm just going to grab the thumb, hit Control Page down. Okay, get my frame 0, and drag that guy up to frame 140. And then if I back off here, there's no movement at my loop points at all. So if I hit play, brings it up, does his idle, fires it, and then brings it back down. Okay, brings it up, does his idle, fires it, and comes back down. Idle's nice and long and slow and very, very minor amounts of movement, just so that there is something actually moving in your view. It doesn't look like your game's frozen. Okay, so now I can save this. And I don't need any gun animations because the only time the gun moved was during fire, and like I said, I used the exact same timing as my other fire, so I'm not worried about it. Okay, I could do it if it needs to call the same exact animation name. All I got to do is pretty much just duplicate that sequence in UDK and rename it to one player fire anim. One player aim fire, and I'm good to go. If that turns into a problem. So I'm just going to select all my character bones again, go to Actor X, remember 42 is my magic number. This is my arm, Glock anims. Okay, one player 2 aim happens from 0 to 10. Digest that. Okay, one player aim idle happens from 10, get a dash, 110. And digest that. One player aim fire happens from 110 to 130, and from aim happens from 130 to 140. Okay, I go to my animation manager and I hit load, so it says it does not exist yet, which means I named this wrong. It's arms. Okay, there are 7 sequences there. Okay, so it'll give you a little flag if you've named everything wrong. I can just get all these guys and move them over and hit save. Okay, I'll save my scene, and I go back to UDK. So I just go to my content browser, go back to my package. Just going to fully load it because I did have it closed. One player arms Glock. Okay, move this into position. Just go to my anim here, say import. Say yes on everything. Now you can see I got 2 aim. Okay. You can see that he brings it right up to that axis point. You see that line's running right down that guy. Okay, there's a reason why earlier on I realized I had to center that gun. Okay, he's got fire, works. Okay, he's got aim idle, slight bit of movement. Aim fire, bang, bang, comes straight back for the most part. Moves up and down a little bit. I got from aim. Okay, notice that doesn't loop in and amongst itself. It's going from aim to idle. Okay, if you notice here at the end, when I come down here, that it wants to go back, that's because I'm actually set this to looping. Okay, if I come here, don't set it to looping. And there's actually a setting here to say no looping interpolation. Well, actually, we'll get rid of that. It says disable interpolation between last and first frames while looping, and it was wanting to interpolate because the first frame's way over here and the last frame's over here. So if it wants to loop this, it thinks, oh well, I need to bring it back to here, so I'm going to do that, at this last blend point. Okay. So I just want to congratulate everybody that got through to this, and if you're at this stage, you are doing very well. You're pretty much almost ready to go. It's really going to be up to the programming side, and if you follow along there, you should have no problems getting this working in game. Okay, all these animations are pretty much going to work just fine in game. Okay. let me go ahead and actually load the PSA for this gun. Okay, if I hit the fire animation, I loop it. Okay, you see the trigger. Okay, the equip, just cocks it. Reload, the mag comes out and back in, and then it slaps forward. And that's it. That's all we need for it. And like I said, if it comes down to be you need an aimed fire, you can actually go to anim sequence, and I think there's a duplicate. I know you can rename it. Copy sequence to selected or current anim set. I don't know what that does. Let's say new sequence name, one player aim fire, and hit OK. Okay, it just makes a copy of it. It's the same thing. I don't need to export it from Max. I could just, you know, delete everything and put the gun back to 000 and export frames 110 to 130 and name it you know, one player aim fire, but I'm going to get the exact same thing. It's going to be identical. Okay, so you can always copy and you can rename these. You know, say you did make a mistake and you rename this reload with 2 D's. You can always just go anim sequence. You can say rename the sequence. You can fix it right here. You don't have to go back to Max and re-export it or anything like that. Okay, so now all of this is going to all work together. And in the end, you're pretty much going to end up with something very, very similar to this here. Okay, I didn't do anything much different. Alright, you're going to add this aim. You notice there's not a lot of movement when I fire this thing. Okay, there's much more movement when I fire it here. Okay, got a sprint. Okay, your the reload, I mean the equip that I made for this tutorial is actually better than the one I'm using. Okay, I might even use it myself, because having him cock the gun during equip is that's actually kind of pretty cool. You know, that's better than what I was doing. So if I go to equip here and show it, you know, he brings it up and then he cocks it. You know, that's more dynamic than what I had, where he just brought it up. So that's a bonus. And like I said, I am gonna be saving this, and I'm gonna get textures and materials in here. And for those that do decide to help out our project with a small donation, or $5 or more, you're gonna get this. You know, this package is going to be part of the deal. You know, all this stuff is done and ready to go. The only difference is going to be you're going to see materials. Okay, it's going to look nice and textured. You know, with decent materials on here, high res. And I'm also going to provide all the Max source files. Okay, I'm not going to give you this ARM space because that's the broken one. But pretty much most of these files, I'm going to kind of weed through them and make sure I'm not giving you guys something that you know is just a duplicate of something else. Okay, and you'll get these, the PSAs, the PSKs. Okay, one for each. I'm going to provide that. Okay, I'm going to give you all these files here, so you can go in and rework them however you want, or just examine them. You know, or open it up and laugh at how terrible you think it is, because you know you're a million times better than me, and that's fine too. You know, have fun if that's what you want to do. I got some reference pictures here too. I don't know if you really want that. I'm not going to probably include that. You don't really need any of these OBJs, so I'm not going to give any of that. But like I said, I am going to give all of this all of these max files, all these rigging files and things like that. I might, like I said, I might just organize it so it's a little, it makes a little bit more sense in what's going on. But the value of what you're going to get here is pretty high. I mean, if you watch the whole video, you see how long this whole thing took. Granted, again, I took time to stop and smell the roses. Basically explain what I'm doing, and that made it last a lot longer. In general, I can usually get a weapon out in roughly 2 to 3 days from start to finish, painted, animated, 100%, including the 3-player model, which can add a little bit here and there. But so in terms of value, if you donate $5, you're getting a lot, because there's no way you're going to be able to buy assets that are in this state, okay, that are actually in here with materials and ready to go, in UDK specifically. You might get the model, you might just get this, you might get a good texture. For the most part, what I found is that weapon models that you buy online, while their quality is good, a lot of times they're really extremely high resolution. They're in like the hundreds of thousands of polygons, because they'll use turbo smooth and they'll just make sure that it's uber smooth. Or it tends to go the other way. If it's not super high res, it's super low res. It's hard to find a good balanced weapon that has a really good polygon count in terms of working in a specific thing like games, okay? And if you do find it, it's probably going to cost like $50. I've seen them cost $275. If you want to take this and use it commercial free and whatever you want, they don't come cheap. They charge you a lot. Usually at least $50. And quite often it goes in the couple $100 range for them to give up their rights to use this. And like I said, if you help us out with even $5, you'll get this, and that's about $300 value, plus almost 20 hours worth of training, which is actually a lot. We're going to try to make it all available. I'm hoping that I can encode it at a decent enough quality. Right now, all of the videos I have combined is just the raw videos that I've taken for this whole project is 35 gigs of video. So I have to go through and encode all that, and then we have to upload it. So right now it's a raw AVI file, so each hour is about 1.5 gigs, okay? And I've got 33 gigs. So we're looking at roughly 20 hours of video, something around there, okay? That's to me, I think is pretty useful information, especially if you haven't done this before, at all, ever, to get to this point here, and have something like this be working, and you've never touched animation. Because I tried to explain everything, basically assuming the worst, right? Assuming that people don't know anything. And I think a really high percentage of the people that may view this are going to know a lot more than I'm assuming. I'm guaranteeing that most people are going to know a good portion of everything I've said. But hopefully, even for the experienced experts, that there's been some information that you didn't know about. Maybe you never thought to capture your skin pose so that you can blend your weights while you're in the pose, and then go through and hit a whole bunch of different areas and then just revert. Maybe you bent it and then came back and then bent it back and then fixed it and then bent it and then came back and and you're like, oh well, yeah, that's easier because I can actually see what it's doing in that. Maybe you weren't sure how to apply the orientation constraint, how to get something to move in and out of the hands and things like that. That stuff really has taken me, over a decade to pretty much perfect, this system here. This is actually weapon number, I believe, for me, 83. Okay, this is like the 80th weapon I've done in since I started working in 3D, and I've been using this same basic system and method and most of these same techniques, with the orientation and link constraints and things like that, over the course of of years and years and years. I've been involved in quite a few projects, and so I do. This is to me, I think I do know what I'm talking about in a lot of senses, and hopefully the results here, kind of prove it. Even though, I admit where everything's not looking so great, where I cut corners and maybe where I didn't do the model as good as I should have, or anything like that. And I don't claim that I'm anywhere near as good as anybody, even though the worst artist at Epic, I think is probably 10 times better than me, and the worst artist at Pixar, probably, has been doing this, for a quarter of the time that I have, and is a million times better than me. There's a billion people out there, that are better than me at all of this stuff, but I did want to take that time out to kind of help the people that are struggling with this, because this part of getting of your game, if you're doing a first-person shooter, it's huge. It's almost the whole game relies on it, and when you get hung up at getting a weapon in the game, or if you're stuck with all the UT stuff and you don't know how to get it working with your own stuff, and that's your goal, that can set you back forever. And there's really not a whole lot of information. There's tutorials on animation, there's tutorials on exporting, and all that good stuff. But the whole package, start to finish, really, with the only thing me skipping being the modeling of the arms, okay? Which, if you just look, you look at it, you see how I modeled it. Really, I mean, if people are dying to see how I created these arms, just let me know, and I'll make a video of me modeling them. That's really no big deal. It didn't take me but 20 minutes or something. I mean, well, it took longer than that, but I mean, it wasn't rocket surgery or brain science. Okay, so hopefully you find that that this is worth taking a little bit of time out to help us out. And like I said, you'll get a lot in return for it. I'm not trying to rip anybody off. Hope you don't feel like we're trying to rip anybody off. And if you donate $5 or more by just going to our site and using PayPal, we will make this available to you. We will either email it directly to you, or give you a protected link or something to get it, and then you'll be able to use it in whatever you want. And if you're doing any kind of military game and you don't have a Glock, and you can use a Glock, there you go. If you just want to be able to insert your own weapon into this system, because that's the other kind of beautiful thing, is this gun. I could just take this out of here. I could put any gun in his hand and just keep going. Okay, I can do a shotgun. I can do. I mean, and like I said, I used this system, for 80 something weapons in the past. Not on this project, but I mean, I've got a like a Mossberg here. If I go to the Anims here and I go to the 3-player, or not, I don't want to show the 3-player because I didn't cover that, but let's say I got the 1-player version here. This is my character, right? My arms, which I think are actually worse than the ones that I've just made to make available. And let's just put the 1-player mesh in there. Okay, it's not a huge leap to go from a pistol to a shotgun. Really, this arm is constrained the IK solver and this wrist bone are constrained to the weapon socket bone, and it's all comes from the same thing. Okay, so if I go to idle here, if I go to fire here, which is actually kind of a fun one, he actually fires it and then he cocks it. Okay. And all I did was this hand is not actually socketed to the weapon socket. It's actually socketed to the bone that controls the pump on the gun. Okay, so all I gotta do is move the pump back and forth, and the hand goes with it. Okay, I know you don't see the pump move here, but you can see that the hand is following something, which is actually the pump. Okay, so if I show you the weapon, the gun, the one-player gun anim, and I show you the firing animation for this fire, you can see that the pump goes back. Okay, I don't know if I bothered with the trigger. I didn't bother with the trigger because it just wasn't being seen. Okay, so when I play this, it's the same exact timing. Pump goes back at the same moment that his hands follow the pump, and in game it works out perfect. Okay, and I can show you that if I just play it. Bang, check, and then you can see that the pump goes with it. Okay, our sounds are messed up and everything, but very simple. Okay, if I aim it, okay, moves it out of the way to pump it. Reload's not great, but it's not too bad. Okay, same exact thing that I did for the pistol. I did, different weapon. So like I said, you can easily insert anything in here, pose it all up. You can replace the arms, and if you've watched the videos and you got to this point using these assets, if you wanted, you should have a really good understanding by now of how all this works out. And really, your next move is to now go on and check out the scripting part of the tutorial, because a good huge portion of the magic happens there. Without a programmer, without somebody that knows what they're doing, your project's not going to go very far. Okay, there's a lot more artists out there than there are programmers, and there's a lot of really great programmers out there, and Paul is one of them. He knows what he's doing, so you're going to be in good hands when I pass you over to him. Okay, and you may have started over there and and read all that stuff before you bothered with any of this. But if you started from where I'm starting, which is the art asset stuff, then and you go over there, you will and you do follow it, and you do it right, you're going to end up in good shape. You're going to have pretty much what I showed you working in your game, whatever weapon you want, and it's going to really be up to you to tweak it. Okay, so here's a Glock in your face. Okay, I hope you enjoyed everything, and thank you for watching. And if you donate, thank you for donating. And this is Hit Pause signing off.